segue into, you'll just see a little bit of shuffly screen sharing going on while I get things while I get things up and running. So we are there. So we're going to do this as a tag team today, and so we're going to start off. Harriet, you're going to start with a little bit of the welcome, aren't you?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thanks, Linda. It's lovely to see people on the screen and to know that people were really interested in coming along to this. We just want to take you through today a little bit of some work we did together back in, it was January, wasn't it? Was it January? It feels like lockdown means and coronavirus means I forget where we are in time, but it was in January, when 5 of us got together to run a workshop in Firestarter around using liberating structures in the public sector. And we were really interested in running a kind of shared inquiry session, which meant that we were really wanting people to come along and share their own experience of using liberating structures, and also give people opportunity to experience liberating structures during the session. If you haven't come across them before, they are essentially a set of approaches and kind of processes to help you work with groups both large and small to have conversations, usually in situations where there isn't a really clear way forward, or you need to have a conversation that you haven't had before, or you've got some really complex stuff to work with. So yeah, that was what we set out to do. It will be really lovely just to hear a little bit from people about what you would like to get from this session. So Linda has popped into the chat box a link, and you'll see on the screen at the minute that we've got this welcome slide up. We are using something called Mural, which is an online collaborative tool. The way I think about it is it's like a massive piece of paper that you might have up on the wall in a room, and you can use it to stick things onto, essentially. So Linda has just shared that link. So if you want to click on that link, it will take you to this mural that you'll see here. Now, if you have any problems with it, I'm sorry about that, and we will keep it on the screen share, won't we, Linda? So if you can't get the link to work, it doesn't matter, you won't lose out. But if you can get the link to work, what I'd like to invite people to do is to stick a post-it on it, on this welcome bit, which is really easy to do. So if you see down the right-hand side, this outline, the outline bit on Mural, if you click on the welcome bit, it should zoom you into there. And they're just on the left hand, and if you double click your cursor, just anywhere on that blank bit of space, a post-it note should pop up and let you put your name on it or type. It would be lovely if you could type in, look, somebody's done it, that's brilliant. Type in what you would like to get from the session, what drew you to come to this session. And if you're struggling with that, if you want to pop that in the chat as well, that would be lovely. So into the Zoom chat, if you just want to say what you're interested in finding out about, that would be fab too. Great, thank you. I'm just reading what people have written. So moving away from the norm when working with teams. Yeah, that's definitely something. Oh, somebody's got their mic on. I'm getting really bad feedback. If people can mute, that would be great. Anything anybody's putting in the chat? So one of the things we also wanted to show you was just that this is quite an easy collaborative tool to use. And that was one of the things we did together, was use some collaborative tools.
I can see we've got at least one person who wanted to be at the session in Firestarter but couldn't make it. Brilliant.
I think this might give you a tiny taster. Just a tiny one. So I think I'll let people carry on doing that, but I'm going to hand over to John, who's going to just tell you a little bit about the team of us that came together to do the event.
Go. Hey everybody, my name's John, and you can see the image there on screen of us all. I'm going to do a bit of live editing myself because the group haven't seen this. I was tasked with, well, to be fair, I volunteered. I offered to tell you a bit about the group, and initially well, you can read a little bit about us there. I've added an image, but I can't see where it's gone. Where's it gone? Have I added an image? I tried to add an image. Let's try that again. Or maybe it's too big. Let's try that. There we go. So as much as they would like you to believe that that's us, I think this is more like us. We're the, if the mystery machine is liberating structures, then we're definitely the mystery gang. And actually, when I thought about it, there's a bit of a parallel between the characters in Scooby-Doo and us. And to be polite, I've characterized myself as the dog, but I was definitely the new one to the group as well. So who have we got? Well, inside the mystery machine, we've got Linda and Leah, who in no particular order are definitely the Fred and Daphne of the group. They, at least from my point of view, they got us together and had a real handle on things. And then we've got Katie, who at the time was at CivTech, and in her own words is definitely the super practical one, which leaves Harriet and I as the Shaggy and Scoob. And now clearly Harriet is, in a very responsible position and does great work in her own right. But my memory of the process was that we were typically the ones who would derail conversations and take them off in tangents that were completely unrelated to what we were supposed to be talking about. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight as to the characters that you're dealing with this afternoon.
Thanks a lot, John. So here you're experiencing live the reality of this group, which is John bringing a unique spirit of mischief and impro to the process, which has been brilliant. It's really kind of core to his approach, and I really enjoyed, as well as wanted to strangle him for at various points. I'm sure he felt the same about us. So that's absolutely brilliant. What we're going to do now is just give you a little bit of a movie. So we kind of imagined that, so you've maybe arrived in the mystery machine with us into this session, and what we want to do is do a wee little in-house movie. So what I'm going to do just now, and it'll just take me a wee moment to activate this and get it running, but what we would like to do is show you the movie. So if you're already in Miro, why don't I invite you to take a seat. So try sticking a sticky over the seat you'd like to sit on while I just get this up and running. It'll just take me a moment. Sing to yourself, people. It's the beauty of digital working about to happen. So you can find a lot of what we did all playing on Twitter. Here we go. Come on, screen. Here we go. So Liberating Structures is obviously an alphabet of tools you can use with people with really simple structure and process that enables everyone to take part and to work through processes together to make things happen and have good conversations. There's a range of people in Scotland who have been experimenting with these tools and practices, and today was an opportunity to come together and share what we've been learning as we've done that over the last year. Some of the joy of that was not knowing what it was going to be. I think the main thing for me is around just getting different people from different worlds together to share the practice, to see new connections form and opportunities form, and that's what's been happening. There's been some fantastic conversations and connections today. So there we go. I should just bring us back. So that was a little flavour of the day itself. Organised chaos is probably a lovely way to capture it. But what I'm going to do just now is hand on to the next team member, Leah, who's going to talk a little bit about our process, or kick us off in a bit of a conversation about that.
Thanks, Linda. Isn't it so weird seeing people touch each other? I was watching that video going, oh my God, don't hug, everyone's so close. So thank you. I'm going to just briefly and quickly and at quite a high level, which is probably all it needs actually, about our process. Thinking back on it, it was pretty straightforward. We got a team together, we had conversation, and we agreed we did, like Harriet said in the beginning, wanted to have a shared inquiry process. So how could we make space for people to set out, or where they could unveil, where they could realize, where they could articulate and share and develop their experiences with liberating structures and using them in public service. And also think about their successes, their achievements, their hopes, and their dreams for them, and what liberating structures could enable. There's something too about using liberating structures to discuss liberating structures that's quite meta, but maximizes the opportunity for people to share knowledge and experience of the ways in which they've been using them. We worked together when we could. We're all living, at the time, we're all living in different places, Glasgow, Edinburgh. Katie, I think, was going between Aviemore and Edinburgh. So we had meetings together when we could. I remember one that really kicked us off, where we used the selection matchmaker, or there's a way in which you can use the Liberating Structures cards or menu to help you decide which structures are right for the thing you want to do. In person together, we went through that process. We mapped it on an actual whiteboard, and then I went away and put that online in Miro, which is something that's like Mural that we're using today. And that really formed the sort of backbone of our collaboration, which we could do asynchronously, and we could do on phone calls when we could. Does anybody want to jump in and talk about their memory of the process, or things that stood out that would be useful to people here?
Yeah, I think it's great that, I know Katie put that Liberating Structures selection matchmaker in there, and that's something that's available on the Liberating Structures website that I use a lot. And you're taking me back to the fact that we used it to actually think about how to plan the day, didn't we? So what I really like about them in that way is that you've kind of got this. You've not just got your own memory of the times you facilitated a group and a thing that worked well. You've got a selection of methods and how to facilitate conversations available to you, and that the toolkit really helps you, just really helps you work out what might be useful where. And we had some great conversations because we had physical cards, didn't we, with them on? So we were, yeah. we could kind of
me
move
and Katie
those
sort
around.
of travel with our decks.
Yeah. And I remember we had lots and lots of exploratory conversations, because we would not only trying to work out how to do the agenda, but we were trying to work out how to work together, and the two things were going on at the same time. And I really enjoyed it because we come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think that there's a question I think David's brought in about can you do this stuff online, and the answer's yeah. And between when we met, some of the people that were in the room when we had this session were starting to experiment with online delivery, but you know, it's just been completely accelerated with the impact of COVID, and there's some great online resources about online delivery. And in the harvest and the wild harvest bit of this mural, there's a link that connects you to all the different places and spaces where Liberating Structures work goes on. So it's like a big open Creative Commons community where people just do stuff and pitch it in, and you can pull it out and use it as is useful. So yeah, it's I think there was something about our process, you know, that kind of connects to that for me, which was around it being Creative Commons, about how everything that we did was as open as we could do. We shared our notes with our participants, we shared our thinking and advancing as it was developing, and that we explored the use of social media and digital to start to kind of prime and support the conversations. As Leah was saying, we did a lot of our own work online and Zoom and in other spaces. But there was another thing that was really important to me, is that there's something about Liberating Structures and its use in Scotland, which is about it just starting to, it feels like it's cracking the surface, you know, like in public service, we can tend to like pick up a new toy and play with it until it's broken. And I just had that sense of, you know, Liberating Structures was starting to get noticed and talked about. And we were really keen to hold the question of what's it actually like both to use these functions in public service, but not get too hung over who's the expert and who's not the expert, you know. So that led us to this thing of an inquiry question. So rather than saying this is a teach-in, this was a let's go into this with inquiry and find out what we're learning, because we haven't all got together to share that yet, and it's emerging. Yeah, is there any other of the team about how things were in the process? Anything else you want to pitch into?
I think that the tools are definitely, you're better to experience them. It's hard to, at the beginning of the process, I felt a little bit lost because I hadn't experienced them, trying to understand how they were going to fit into the flow of the day. As soon as you experience them, it all made perfect sense. So I suppose there's a need to sort of play with them and prototype them, and you know, if you want to use them for something specific, make room in your process to do that, so that you know that you're comfortable with them and you get a better handle on it.
I think that's a great bit of advice. Yeah, and I'd say there's some super active Liberating Structure user groups, which now we no longer have to be in the same place to meet up. The London and Cardiff Liberating Structures groups have regular sessions, and they're really there for people to go and experience what it's like to use those structures. And obviously they're completely online. And for me, I joined them and I had the chance to experience facilitating a liberating structure online, which I wouldn't have wanted to do for the first time online, but you're doing it with a group of other liberating structures users there. So again, they've just created the space that you can understand what it means to use these in different settings. So I'd encourage folk who are interested to sign up for those user events.
I'll find some links while we're going through to drop in the chat to the different meetup groups that are very active. And I think that there's a day-long Liberating Structures Immersion coming up. So if you're keen to spend 8 hours online with with other folks doing Liberating Structures virtually using digital tools, that Immersion is a really, really great way to do that. I had been helping to co-design and co-facilitate immersion sessions over the summer. So I can very confidently say most Liberating Structures can be done in some way online. Some of them a bit trickier, but most of them I think can be done online somehow.
Yeah, I went along to one of the early ones, the early tests of the immersion, and it was fab. I ended up having a paired consultation and appreciative interview, I think it was, with a feminist academic in Iraq. It was awesome. So, so yeah, that, you know, as we worked through all that approach, I mean, we put together a string that could have lasted us a week, all the things that we wanted to do with these, you know, amazing public people working in and around public service across Scotland. And one of the hardest things was drilling it down to the final agenda we had. And even that was over ambitious. So I think that was kind of a key reflection for me, both as a group of people who love creating stuff together and making stuff together, but also, you know, like when you get a chance to actually bring a community together, is about saving the space. So we ended up with this agenda that we've got a wee crib of, that was around just enabling, can you think about the purpose of this session was an inquiry and supporting a community of practice. It was all about creating a chance for networking and connection, giving people downtime and time to recover, doing a bit of appreciative inquiry and base camp groups. So we broke people up into groups based on their self-identified level of experience. And they just interviewed and got right in about each other's experience. And then we looked for some of the sense and kind of what insights were coming from that. And then we did some open space off of the back of that. And then people organised around self-interest groups and self-directed exploration. And then we came back together to do a bit of a harvest. But you can see a wee bit more of how that came together and as we talk through. But, you know, the key thing was around the inquiry, creating space for inquiry. And as we did that, I'm just going to move us on to the Pecha Kucha. One of the things that we were thinking about as a holding group was that there was 5 of us and we wanted everyone to know us enough that they could approach us and speak to us, engage with us, but we also didn't want the whole session to be about us, which it could easily have been if we'd all taken time to introduce our passion and why we were doing it. So we used the not liberating structure, Pecha Kucha approach, just to really help us drill down on what we needed to share with people about the setup of the inquiry and why we were here, and to help them connect with us. And we liked it so much, the discipline so much, we thought we'd bring that to today. So today's session is about reflecting on what did we learn and what did we take from that session into our practice in liberating structures in public service. So what we're going to do now is just take you through a Pecha Kucha, where we'll each give you a little insight to what we've personally taken away, or the insights that really stood out to us from the sessions themselves. So each person's going to speak for between 30 seconds and a minute max, and just give you a bit of a taste. And what we'd like you to do as we're doing that is, in the Zoom chat, is if something really stands out to you, or you've got a question, or you'd like to drill down into something a little bit more from the smorgasbord of things that we're about to share with you, then just let us know in the Zoom. And then we've co-opted Karen in. Karen's just going to help us curate and speak to those things, and we'll dig into things a wee bit more and just take it where it goes, a wee bit of mining, I think, really. So with that, Katie, could I just hand over to you and you can kick us off, and then we'll just pass it round to each other to do the Pecha Kucha.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Hello, everyone. Yeah, when I was thinking about this and what I learned, I actually just came back to what I'd shared on the day. And I love the discipline of the Pecha Kucha in picking images that resonate. And so I'll just say a tiny bit about each of them. So the first one there, which is a big crowd of people, one of the whys I got interested in liberating structures is because they're facilitation techniques which are scalable. You can do them with 2 people, or in that case, you could do them with 600 people if you need to. They prompt perspection, which was a piece of graffiti I found the week before we were hosting the event, which turns out to be a Scots law term for contemplating regard and scrutiny. And that just spoke to me, because I think liberating structures are all about giving a different view. And finally, that they are playful and about making connections. And my connection there is David Heath, who's the person talking in that picture, is in a liberating structure, doing a fishbowl conversation. But he introduced me to liberating structures. And what I just like about them is that they are all about
making connections, and those user groups, those experiences, they are very playful and very open places to experiment with your practice. I will hand over to Harriet.
Thanks. Just before I start, in case anybody was wondering what pechakucha means, it's just a term from the design world. I think it might come from Japan, as a way to do a very, very quick presentation and get your ideas across. And you've got, you're only allowed to use slides, and you've only got a set amount of time to do it. So that's what we're up to. So the slide at the top of mine is a whole load of funny looking toys all on top of a van together. I've always loved this slide because it's for me a kind of metaphor of diversity. So we're quite a diverse team, the 5 of us that came together from different backgrounds, different kinds of employment. We're not all employed together in the public sector. So and that the liberating structures methods are like a really, they kind of like create boats for you to get into together and do stuff together. So I think they kind of hold your diversity really well. So they allow that diversity to come through in conversations, and for people to not get into situations where that diversity is a blocker for them listening and talking to each other. So that's what I really like about them. And then the bottom 2 slides are about my own experience of doing this event and facilitating together. So the one of the person being thrown in the air is that I felt like I was part of a team where we kind of went, let's have a go, let's just do this together. And I just had to go, yeah, okay. And that was it. And we had some fun and did something interesting and fun together, and which I probably wouldn't have been brave enough to do on my own. So I really enjoyed that. And linked to that is this colourful procession going on somewhere that got me thinking about permission, and that I didn't feel I needed. I'm probably somebody who, maybe it's a public sector trait, looks for permission to do something like hold an event and invite lots of people to do it. But actually we didn't look for anybody's permission. We just got together and did something. And I was reminded, as I have been many times, that is just brilliant. And nobody comes along and tells you what you're doing. It was worked really well and everybody really enjoyed it. So I will hand you on to John.
Thanks, Harriet. And just to chip in on the pechakucha, what it's all about, the format was developed by British architects who were based in Japan, and pechakucha in Japanese means chit chat. So the format is typically 20 slides on a timer of 20 seconds each. So, you know, it can be a car crash, or it can be, you know, but it's always exhilarating and entertaining. So my 3 slides, starting with the image at the top, is just a screen grab from the video. That was kind of my role. Before planning the event in February, I'd never engaged or never experienced liberating structures before. So I was sort of brought in. One of my jobs was to observe and to document. And initially, primarily, I was there to record audio conversations along the lines of the BBC listening project. But once it all kicked off, people were so animated and engaged in the process, I was just compelled to start capturing video as well. So consequently, I didn't sit in as many of the activities as I thought I would. But the ones I did join in, what I noticed was that people were really engaging with the process, that they were being really open to the process, and just open in how they were discussing ideas and how they contributed. And it must have been contagious, because while I was making, at the beginning of the day, I'd said, you know, if anybody doesn't want to be in the video, we'll be filming, but just let me know. And one person came and spoke to me and said they didn't want to be in the video because they were meant to be at work and they were scared the boss might see it. So they could have told me anything, but they volunteered that. So that's why I found that happiness, which I thought was quite good, bunking off work to spend the day liberating structures. And then finally, my takeaway was to be more open and trusting of these processes. And I thought I was already that kind of a person. I like these kind of things, but Liberating Structures sort of demonstrated that you can push it even further than I thought you could. So that's my sort of takeaway to try and do more of. And I'm also particularly keen to, and I've seen people mention this in the chat as well, to see how this works in the virtual space, because I already feel like our Zoom and Skype meetings are past their sell-by date and need wakening up. On to Leah.
Thank you. So what I've shared here is one image from the day, the Pechakucha. And it's a kind of visual metaphor for what I think liberating structures can enable in any environment, but I suppose especially in public services, where talking about failure or not doing well or improvement can be taboo. And I think that's a shame, but I feel liberating structures can offer people the opportunity to safely go into conversations that might be controversial, or in other formats might reinforce the sort of power inequity in a group, in that type of conversation, talking about improvement or failure, or building on something. So this is a kintsugi. This is a Japanese practice of repairing broken pottery with gold or with silver. And the idea is that the break is part of the story and part of the history of that object. It's not to be hidden, it's to be sort of celebrated and made visible and made part of the object. So to me, that was a really great metaphor for what liberating structures can open up, is building on things that have gone before, and progressing and moving on, and recognizing past events or past people that you've done things with. So that's kintsugi. And then the image up to the right, which is a sort of Venn diagram, and I don't know if that's visible, but the three circles. Oh, thanks, Linda. This is a simple Venn diagram that I use as part of another practitioner community that I'm part of, called the Design Justice Network. And just at the time I was getting quite involved with the Design Justice Network, I was helping to plan this event that was going on at Firestarter Festival. And what Design Justice does, it's a kind of framework and a set of principles for rethinking how we design things, how we design policy, objects, buildings, anything, and really put a critical eye to it with regard to inequity and justice, and the distribution of harms and benefits of the things that we do. So I started to bring that thinking into my approach as a facilitator. And as a facilitator that focuses first on liberating structures is always my first port of call. I assume liberating structures will be appropriate for what I'm trying to do until they're not. But being around the Design Justice group, where I'm working with a lot of people who do anti-oppressive facilitation, a lot of trauma-informed work, it helped me, those conversations helped me see liberating structures in a slightly different frame. And that is about how we can move beyond creating spaces that feel equitable and democratic, and that there's parity or there's opportunity for everyone to speak, move beyond that to spaces for liberation, spaces for anti-oppressive work. So this occurred to me sort of after the event, but it's something that I've been very focused on since, and it's something that I'm working on now. So if anyone is interested in sort of interrogating liberating structures through a frame of equity, inequity, and oppressions that exist outside, so we don't replicate them in our meetings and in what we're trying to do. That's really the core of the anti-oppressive facilitation slant. And if I'm not making sense, let me know and I'll talk to you. I'm happy to talk to you after. And lastly, this is just a simple diagram to express, or image to express, that the community around liberating structures is really, really important to me. I, in my personal experience, bringing some of these structures into public sector environments can feel, it can be quite lonely sometimes. You might feel like the weirdo and the freak trying to bring in different ways of working, different ways of having discussions. So finding a global community that has a sense of solidarity, that's knowledge sharing, that can help me build and learn has been invaluable. And so at those moments where I'm feeling like I might not be approaching something well, or I don't really know what I'm doing, or yeah, just outcast, I suppose. The community has just been so wonderful. And if you're going to mess up anywhere, messing up in the Liberating Structures community is exactly the place to do it. Failing lovingly.
From failing lovingly to a chocolate teapot. So my 3 images are here. So I chose a chocolate teapot because, you know, I have been in public service for long enough that I've seen 101 methodologies come and go in and out of favour. And the question is, do they hold the heat of the conversations that we need to have, both the heat of the passion, but the heat of the conflict? And my experience so far is that Liberating Structures do, because they're rooted in, and this isn't, there's lots of, the chocolate teapot's another analogy for me, something that looks really kind of refined and beautiful on the outside, but when you go to use it, it kind of melts away. It's like the outside Liberating Structures can look really glossy, but when you start to dig underneath them, you find that it's rooted in stuff like psychodynamics. And I didn't really, in other forms of participative approach, and I hadn't really clocked that until we all started working together, and all of our different approaches would all come to using them because of a different aspect of how we approach bringing people together and being part of groups. So just by coming together, we were able to tell our own story as to how we'd come to it, and it surfaced for me that, you know, Liberating Structures has got a lot more substance than it looks when you look at the shiny cards and the beautiful content. And I think also chocolate teapot, because it's really easy. I mean, what we've done in laying out all of this stuff today probably could, except for when I was tripping over the uploads, could look quite glossy. But, you know, and that happens a lot in public sector when we talk about groups coming together. There's always a glossy version of it on Twitter, but underneath actually it's people come together and doing hard work and having tricky conversations and having a laugh and, you know, dropping their sandwiches. So it's just about how can we hold both the enough gloss that attracts people and makes them feel safe, but enough substance that we're working with the real stuff. And in that, it kind of takes me to my second image, which was about the one below, the gaping void one, about disruptor. And that as a Liberating Structures facilitator full stop, I think the thing that really struck me is it just reminded me that Liberating Structures is designed to help us disrupt the power dynamics that are traditionally in place around hierarchy and governance, and that unless you're prepared to disrupt your own relationship with hierarchy and governance, including how you show up and facilitate, then you know you're not going to get far with these methodologies. So we tried really hard to change our role and to kind of shake things up a bit as we approached and designed and implemented that day, and we did all this stuff to set it up, and in the end up, when things got a little bit shonky, a little bit discombobulating, and the energy got up in the room, I did what I always do in the same way as I always did it, and it just reminded me about how strong the pools are in the public sector, and you know, that are ingrained in me as I'm facilitating, and that I really need to work more on that. And so the last point for me is kind of building on that, is that if I think that in that setting, you know, as a facilitator and someone who's succeeding in public service, I've got all the power, I'm the fish in the water. So, you know, that I'm feeling like that, and I've got a lot of control and power. So how do I get myself sort of out of my environment and surfacing some of these tensions? And, you know, just the wee things that we did, like inviting people to self-identify how much experience they had, and then to work in base camp groups about their experience based on their experience, kind of started to break some of the norms. Do you know, like quite often you go to a community of practice and there's an undercurrent of, you know, I want this to be about X and I would like it to be about Y, and I don't want to sit with the newbies because I'm going to have the same conversation I've had 20 times. But when you surface that sort of difficult dynamic in a community, it enables it to work with it, and the group did. So yeah, how do we surface and work with the tensions and get ourselves out our own water and recognise our own privilege? So that's our quick run through our Peta Kucha, and my goodness, time's flown by. But Karen, I wonder if you could just help us with maybe a couple of questions or reflections from the group so that we could close with the voice of the group.
Sorry, on mute. Yeah, lots of reflections here. Marie Hernandez was talking about the kind of challenge of capturing images and experiences and connections. And I think that's a really interesting one. And I think, Leah, you came in there saying that it's something that the group have been grappling with quite a lot. Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, this is really kind of spooky because we, in our run through this morning, we're talking about and reflecting on a meeting we had with a person called Fisher Kwa, who I think is kind of a superstar in the Liberating Structures world. Fisher is somebody who is, I guess, a core member of the founding team of Liberating Structures. I don't know how to say it. Fisher was in Scotland. They're usually in Seattle and just happened to be here traveling with their mother. So we took the opportunity me, Katie, and Linda took the opportunity to link up with Fisher and to have all kinds of conversations about liberating structures and our experiences, one of which was harvesting or capturing or documenting what happens at the meetings. From my point of view and from my memory, the spark for that conversation was thinking about what is required of us as public servants to demonstrate what we have been doing, to measure its impact, to measure its worth, to show somebody what happened. So that was the spark of the conversation. And Fisher was saying something along the lines of that what happens in these moments is for the people who are present and who are involved in dialogue and conversation with each other. They're not meant to be captured. And he suggested having something, he called it detritus, that something we could use as evidence to put up to our, I don't know, our managers or whoever, is to capture simply objects or images of papers and scraps and things that have happened. You can spread it on the floor and capture it that way. And I felt really frustrated by that because I felt like I felt like it wasn't being acknowledged, the environments that we work in and the expectations that people have of us to demonstrate how we've been spending our time and what we've done and what the impact of things were. So since then, it's something that comes up, I think, quite a lot in our conversations about documentation, harvest, capture, and yeah, it was kind of spooky because we talked about it this morning and Marie brought it up during the chat just now, and I would love to hear what other folks in the team have to say about that.
I think for me, it's something that I know to be true and also find challenging, is that the change happens in the conversation, the change happens in the person. So you know yourself, the work gets done and stuff changes because you change your perspective or you change the group you're working with, or and it's the stuff you do together because of that is the work itself. And then you need to have physical objects to somehow share beyond that, don't you? And sometimes, and if you're doing policy, or Joanne was asking about using them in policy, it's going to be, the outcome hopefully is going to be a different kind of policy that is enacted differently. But I guess the thing about liberating structures is they are underpinned by that idea that we're working in complexity, and complexity in human systems is about relationships and conversation. And so it's through relationships and conversation that we change things together. And I think there's an and, like you say, Leah, that actually you still need some stuff. You just don't expect the stuff to ever really convey the depth of the conversations and the change that's probably happening. It'll be actions and experiences that will demonstrate it.
I'm just noticing the time, and that will be getting chucked out by our wonderful Sparkfest hosts. I wonder if we can put up the harvest on the screen there, because while we've just said that there's a tension about harvesting, actually what some of the things that were created at the event are well, I've certainly found them really valuable, and some of them are particularly beautiful. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge we had 3 amazing contributions which came kind of to us unsolicited, of things which people created in response to the event, and so we've captured them on that mural there. So you've got from Hazel White, she'd done a sketch note of how the event ran. We have from Sally Kerr explored a response to the event through poetry, and then also Stephanie Krause wrote an absolutely fantastic blog about the day. So I just really want to acknowledge that, and also to acknowledge that John's listening booth, there were some amazing conversations, but something went wrong with the recording and they weren't captured. But as Harriet's just said, the conversations happened, and things still changed for people.
It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really sorry, but we do need to leave it there. I hope everybody really enjoyed that session. I got a huge amount out of it because I couldn't go to the original session either. That's one of the difficulties with fire starters. There's so many things going on at one time, and I hope you guys will be up for doing something probably online in the next Firestarter Festival, and for those that didn't get a chance to experience it. And I would imagine that we'll be even more proficient in using sort of lots of online tools by that time. So it was really good. Thanks very much for taking the time to come along and share your journey, which is for me really the interesting bits about it. So the process that we use to get somewhere is equally as important as what happened. So thank you so much for doing that.